Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating cultural puzzles on the planet. We're going to explore how history created the great Indian melting pot and try to figure out how a culture with such mind-boggling diversity doesn't just hold together, but actually thrives.
So, just to wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about, let's start with the number 4,635. According to the Anthropological Survey of India, that's how many distinct communities there are. Every single one with its own history and its own customs.
And if you thought that was a lot, hang on. Let's add another layer here. 325. That's how many languages are spoken across the country, written in 25 different scripts. I mean, the linguistic diversity is just on another level.
Which brings us to the big central question, right? With all these communities, all these languages, all these traditions, how on earth does it all stick together? What's the cultural glue? That's the mystery we're going to solve today.
So, how does it work? Well, the first key is to think of India not as a solid block, but as a cultural mosaic. It's a place that doesn't just put up with outside influences, it actively absorbs them and makes them part of its own story.
The engine that powers this whole thing is a process called assimilation. And this isn't about erasing what was there before, not at all. It's about weaving new threads into an already rich fabric. It's a constant process of taking something new and making it Indian.
Let's take a super simple example you might not even think about. The potato. It's not originally from India, right? It shows up from somewhere else, local farmers start growing it, and boom, now you can't imagine Indian food without it. The same thing happened with chilies, with tea, even with clothes like the salwar kameez. That's assimilation right there in your kitchen.
Okay, so let's see this process in action during a really key moment in history. The Mughal era is a perfect case study. This was a time that saw one of the most incredible cultural fusions, well, ever.
And who were the catalysts for this change? The Mughals. Now, they did arrive as invaders, but here's the crucial part. They didn't stay outsiders. They settled down, they made India their home, and in doing so, they kicked off this amazing period of cultural creativity.
And wow, the results were this incredible new synthesis of culture. You see it everywhere. In architecture, you get Persian and Indian ideas mixing to create wonders like the Taj Mahal. In music, you get a fusion that gives us Hindustani classical and new instruments like the sitar. A whole new language, Urdu, is born from this mix. Art, dance, everything evolved. These weren't just add-ons. They were brand new, uniquely Indian creations.
But this process didn't just stop in the medieval era. Fast forward to the modern period. Now, the interaction is different. It's not with a new culture looking to blend in, but with a colonial power. And this pressure created a whole new kind of Indian identity.
And this is a really key point. The struggle for freedom wasn't just a political fight against the British. It was also an internal conversation. It forced the people of India to look inward and ask themselves, okay, in this new modern world, who are we? What does it mean to be Indian?
And out of that intense period of questioning, a new set of values emerged that became central to the very idea of India. Things like social equality, democracy, women's rights, religious tolerance. These weren't just abstract ideas anymore. They became core parts of the national identity, things that people had fought and argued for.
So we've seen how India absorbs and fuses different cultures. But what's the deep down core code that lets all this diversity actually work together? What's the secret sauce?
You see, for a long time, the assumption was that the country was mainly divided along religious lines. But then, a massive data-driven study came along and completely flipped that idea on its head.
Okay, get ready for this, because it's absolutely mind-blowing. When the Anthropological Survey of India dug into hundreds of cultural traits, they found something astonishing. They discovered that Indian Muslims share over 96% of their cultural traits with their Hindu neighbors. For Sikhs, it's nearly 90%. What this chart shows us is that the idea of religion being the main dividing line, it's a myth. The real unifier is something else entirely.
And here it is, the big reveal, straight from the source. The most powerful thing that binds people together is where they live, their eco-cultural zone. Basically, people who share the same local environment, the same geography, climate, and resources have way more in common with each other, no matter their religion, than they do with someone of the same faith living 1,000 miles away. It's the shared way of life that's the real glue.
And another thing that's super important to remember is that this isn't just a top-down thing. This melting pot isn't just for the elites. The culture of the masses is just as important. The beautiful poetry of Kalidas is part of the heritage, absolutely, but so are the powerful verses of Kabir, which everyone could understand. The folk music, the local art, that has always been the real lifeblood of the culture.
So where does all this leave us today? Well, the most important takeaway is to see this whole thing not as a finished product you put in a museum, but as a living, breathing project that is always changing. That process we've been talking about, the assimilation, the fusion, the redefinition, it never stopped. It's happening right now. And maybe that ability to always be changing, to always be adapting, is its biggest strength. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it's a perfect system. The source material is very clear that India today faces some really serious challenges. Communal conflicts, discrimination, economic inequality, these are the modern-day tests for this whole pluralistic idea. And that brings us to a final thought. For thousands of years, India has been this grand, messy, beautiful experiment in making a whole out of countless different parts. In a world today that feels like it's fracturing more and more, maybe the lesson from the Indian melting pot isn't just that unity and diversity is possible, but it might just give us a clue as to how we can all achieve it. Thanks for tuning in.